All right. Yep. Definitely got to put that fair use because you know how they do.
Yeah. So, you know, I'm sorry it's not zoomed in better there, people. But this is full screen. All right. So, but yeah, this falls under fair use because we're making a critique. Okay. We're not trying to reproduce anything, trying to sell it or anything like that. This is just a critique. So we always have to put this up first before we show anybody stuff. All right.
Right.
So let's get that out of the way. All right, let's go ahead and get this into it. I skipped the intro, so we're starting at 47 seconds.
All right. Yep.
Our people who have suffered from the time of forced migration and all right. I want everyone to understand.
Can y'all hear that well?
Yeah,
right.
Loud and clear.
All right, cool.
Our mission is to teach, gather, and unify our people. And when I say our people, I'm referring to the diaspora. It's a subject that no one ever talks about. Our people who have suffered from the time of forced migration.
Hold on a second. Stop that real quick. Stop that.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys talk about it all the time. That's pretty much one of their the cruxes of their whole entire. What are they talking about? Nobody ever talks about this. Are they saying other people? Or are they saying themselves?
I don't even know because I mean, before I even knew what this movement was, I heard about scattered Israelites. I mean, within the Messianic community, within the even Christian churches teach that. Maybe not all, but I've definitely heard it before. So I don't know who he's definitely alluding to of not teaching the diaspora, but it's definitely been something that's been taught.
Yeah, you were gonna say, brother?
Harris.
No, I said most likely if he's referring to anyone, it's probably white people. Like white people they like that. I think they're trying to say white people like to hide that, I guess. I assume.
Most likely.
So, all right.
Slave trade and the transatlantic slave trade.
Let's go back so you can call out these slave trades right quick.
Migration, colonialization, the sub-Saharan slave trade, and the transatlantic slave trade. It is the great tribulation that the Bible speaks of, that no church, no organization, no political movement ever speaks on.
Did he just call that the Great Tribulation?
Yeah.
He called that event the Great Tribulation?
Yeah, basically.
Wait a minute. So you're telling me that he's trying to apply the prophecy of Revelation to this event?
I don't know if he's
that transpires on. I mean, I could go deep, man.
Yeah.
I mean, this is ridiculous. That now I'm not calling the event of the transatlantic slave trade ridiculous. I'm calling his assertion ridiculous. Now, what is he trying to imply? He's trying to say this is the Great Tribulation, like of Revelation, or is he just calling this in a general sense a tribulation? I mean,
I mean, he said, let's go back. Let's see if he said or the. So that matters.
Political movement ever speaks on. It is a forgotten history. It is a forgotten.
I went too far.
It is
there we go.
Colonialization, the sub-Saharan slave trade, and the transatlantic slave trade. It is the great tribulation that the Bible speaks of.
Well, whatever the great tribulation that the Bible speaks of is what he's alluding to.
Okay, real quick, these are Native Americans. These are people. So how do these people tie into the transatlantic slave trade?
Well, then again, they.
But I'm saying but I'm saying so okay, because he's trying to conflate the two. But this is the crazy thing, right? Let's off the top of the bat.
Yeah.
These people didn't get sent into Egypt on ship. So what is he talking about? Because Egypt is America in breakdown, right?
Yep.
So what are these people? What do they have to do with the transatlantic slave trade? If, by his own admission, he's saying that Great Tribulation was the sub-Saharan slave trade and the transatlantic. Now, what does he mean by the sub-Saharan slave trade? Is he talking about just slaves being traded in Africa in general, and then also the people sent to the Americas?
Yeah.
Is that what he's referring to? Because the way that I look at it is, how does that fit in with the Native Americans? The Native Americans weren't sent into Egypt, i.e., what he would call America on ship. They were already here.
They were taken from Egypt. If that's the case.
Oh, okay. Okay. He said, so wait a minute. So Egypt is now, wait a minute. Oh, okay. So they were taken, but the prophecy says they would go into Egypt again on ships. It doesn't say you shall leave Egypt on ships. So how does that begin to make sense, man? That's like absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, man. And I see Brother Kemiel's about to say something. I just wanted to mention, he mentioned 2 slave trades, the sub-Saharan slave trade, which is, according to the breakdown, you know, you have the sub-Saharan slave trade where the Arabs sold, you know, the black man or Israelites to the Africans, who then had us in slavery, who then sold us to the Grecians or the white man, who then put us on ships and brought us to America, which is Egypt. That's the way it was broken down. Now, I'm gonna mention this and let Brother Kemiel speak. A book that not only IUIC, but a lot of Black Hebrew Israelites hold dearly is Babylon to Timbuktu. Now, they'll say spit out the bones and all this other stuff, which the bones obviously signify the things that go against their doctrine. So, for example, that book says white people came from Japheth and not Esau. So, of course, that they would consider that bones. So then there's another part in that said white people were sold by Arabs to Africans in North Africa. That's bones. That would be bones too. Because,
see, brother, those are the Northern Kingdom Israelites, brother, because it's a Cape unturned, brother. You know, Ephraim.
Yeah. Okay.
Nah.
So those type of things in the scriptures, I mean, or in that book that they hold dearly, they would count that as bones because it goes against their narrative. Because that the section that says that white people were sold, or more, I'll use the more term, Europeans were sold by Arabs to Africans in North Africa, which I don't know the 100% answer that this is fact, but my guess is maybe that's why there's a lot of them down in South Africa. Maybe they migrated down that way after this whole event took place. But he only mentioned 2 slave trades, sub-Saharan and transatlantic. There's many more slave trades that's happened on the earth, people, that took place via ships. You have the Barbary slave trade in the Mediterranean Sea with the Barbary pirates. You have the Indian slave trade, or the Indian Ocean slave trade, as some people call it, that took place from East Africa across the Indian Ocean, going as far as up into Asia and China. All right, these are different slave trades that's happened, and these things happened over centuries. This ain't happened all one shebang. This took a long time, and these slave trades lasted longer than the transatlantic. All right, specifically with the Indian Ocean slave trade. And so when you guys look into those things, now you're going to start having to ask you a question concerning these slave trades, because the common denominator between these Black Hebrew Israelite groups, a lot of them, they only quote the sub-Saharan and the transatlantic. But when you see these others, and then they ask you that bland question, who else went into slavery on ships? They don't even know who was all on them boats in the transatlantic slave trade, first of all. But let alone these other slave trades that took place with the Barbary slave trade that was predominantly European and European Christians.
It's kind of throwing me off a little bit, and I know it's probably
that was sold
throwing
into slavery as well from East
everybody
Africa
off
into
that's
the other
listening.
nations,
You know,
going up
Brother
as
Jay
far
is
as Asia and
basically
China. So look into
saying
that stuff as well.
that
Somebody mentioned there was an Australian
the
slave trade.
Barbary
So, I mean,
slave trade, and
look
you know,
at it,
there's
okay?
other
You gotta have to
slave
do
trades
deep
that
research,
took
because if you
place
just type in
with other
slavery via ships on
nations
Google here in
being
America,
the
all you're going to
captives,
run into is
which
a
is
bunch of
true.
Atlantic slave trades. That's all
But
you're going to keep running into.
the
But you
one
got to go
thing
deep into
that I
this.
want to point out is, or, you know, I want to give a challenge to Brother Jay, is how long did those slave trades last? What you're saying, and, you know, the Barbary slave trade did last over a century. But I guess the correct question to ask is, how long were the captives enslaved? And if they were enslaved for life, were they able to procreate? Were they able to, you know, have conjugal affairs with the opposite sex? Were the slaves in the Barbary, were they able to free themselves? Were they able to, you know, get married while they were in captivity, or were they just a slave? Because if they were able to have, you know, procreation and sexual contact, then it kind of changes the Barbary slave trade, and then you might have something there. But if it was for a short period of time, or, you know, the slavery ended at their death and they didn't have any contact with the opposite sex, then your argument is pretty vague. I mean, well, you don't really have an argument at all. So I challenge you, Brother Jay, to do some research instead of just throwing out all these, Australian slave trades, Barbary slave trades, the Arab slave trades. Oh, yeah, you had these Caucasian people that were sold into slavery. But, brother, give us the science behind that slavery. Don't just throw out stuff, because you know what that makes you look like, an uneducated brother. And I'm not saying this to, you know, give you a hard time, and I'm not saying it to pretty much, you know, make you look bad, but it's sad, brother, that you're coming up with all these claims and you haven't said anything to back it up other than, oh, there's slave trades other than, these guys here. So they said that they didn't even know there were other slaves. But brother, that's not the point. The point is, in context, did it line up with Deuteronomy 28? That's the whole point of this matter, man. I mean, we all knew every nation went into slavery. I mean, would be dumb to think otherwise. But for you to make an assertion that those slave trades were equal to the transatlantic slave trade amongst the Negroes that are here in America and spread abroad, because we already know that the slaves are scattered to the four corners, okay? And that 12 tribe chart is just to bring awareness to the people over here. You know what I mean? Just like when Jesus came back, he came back first for the Jews. I'm not trying to, let's get this correct. I'm not trying to take up for the chart, but in a way, I understand where it's coming from because we are in the Americas. We have something we have to deal with over here. We can't just say, hey, brothers, let's go over there. Let's go over there and spread the word. Hey, you got to spread it home first. Just like they say in the music industry, native New Yorkers, if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. So, I mean, and I'm not trying to take it there, but I mean, I guess you can see the point. But I just did some little brief research, and it led me to the Barbary slave trade, and I'm basically looking at Wikipedia, and that slave trade off the Barbary coast, white slavery in the Mediterranean, the Barbary coast in Italy, is estimated between 1500 and 1800. And Davis estimates that 1 million to 1.25 million slaves were sold in North Africa, okay, from the beginning of the 16th century to the middle of the 18th century. All right, so we're not going to discount that. But there is something to think about when you look at the decline of the Barbary slave trade. And this is the part that's kind of interesting. And let me find it here. Okay, and this is the decline, the second paragraph. After an Anglo-Dutch raid in 1816 on Algiers immobilized most of the pirate fleet, the Dey of Algiers was forced to agree to terms which included a cessation of the practice of enslaving Christians, although slave trade in non-Europeans could still continue. So, brother, that's huge right there. It's telling you right there. The slave trade could still continue if non-Europeans were involved. That pretty much right there alone lets you know that was something different, brother. So for you to bring out the Barbary slave trade, that's a weak argument, and it's pretty much something that you probably need to reel back in and throw another line out there, brother.
And now that I think about it, it just brought up something that's in my mind. Because when you study the trans-Saharan slave trade, you realize that the Arabs used women a lot of times for sex. And so if that's the case, then how many of those people are actually Arabs? So you know what I'm saying? So how many people that would have been later on sold into America, like they would say,
So
how many of them would actually according to them? You are what your father is, right?
Yeah, the seed of your father determines your nationality, right? So if these men were raping the women,
right,
the women were going to produce children whose lineage was being traced through the male who raped them, right? So in other words, they're no longer being considered quote unquote Israelites in their worldview. Rather, they become, Ishmaelite, or if they say it was the white man, then quote unquote Edomite or whatever.
Exactly.
It's like at that point that debunks their whole argument that these people were Israelites.
Yeah,
man. Brother Kemiel, I hope I got your name right. I'm not sure if I have your name right. You know what I mean? But anyways, I just want to stop you there. It sounds like, once again, you haven't done any research, brother. And this is the frustrating part with me, because as hard as you're going after all of these other groups, and saying, you know, how unlearned and how much research they aren't doing, brother, you're doing the same thing. And not just you, but all of you. All of you have flaws in your doctrine. And the whole thing about it is, and I say this a lot, if you got unsound doctrine, there's going to be holes in your doctrine. You know what I mean? So by you exposing others, you also opening yourself up to get exposed as well. So the best thing you could do in the SOG squad is basically focus on getting people right that you think is the right way instead of focusing on others. Because as you about to see, when people focus on you, you got holes too, brothers. So, you know, if you truly are about the gospel, Christ, he wasn't going out in the streets saying, "Oh, the Pharisees are bad." He was going around in the streets, and I might be wrong about this. I'm just throwing out an assertion because I'm only a year and a half in it. But from what I see, he approached those brothers personally, and you know, he confronted them. You guys are making videos behind people's back, and I know they're gonna see them. But the point is, do like G-Man. That's why I gotta at least respect G-Man, because he's going to the horse's mouth and he's confronting them right there. You know what I mean? Even though I think that it's distasteful and he's doing it wrong, he still is confronting them. And that's the part about being bold as a lion. But anyways, basically, you brought up that if a slave master sleeps with a woman, then basically the child would be what the father is, because that's what you say. Brother, come on, man. Let's not even play that game. That's what the Bible says. Well, the Bible basically says in Numbers 1:18, I think it is, that the pedigree is going to be from the house of the father. So that's in the Bible, brother. It's not what he say, she say. It's right there. It's right there. So, I mean, let's not play these games. I mean, all the extras is not cool. You know what I mean? But anyways, let's get back to slavery in the Muslim world. Okay. This is what it says. Once again, you know, this is Wikipedia, and I like Wikipedia because they give you sources of where they pretty much got their information from. But anyway, this is from History of Slavery in the Muslim World. And I'm going to just skip all of that up there in the first paragraph. I'm going to go straight down to the second paragraph. Under Sharia, parentheses, Islamic law, children of slaves or prisoners of war could be slaves, but only non-Muslims. Okay, but let's read on. And non-Muslims, and this is the part that's a trip, because if the slave master has a child by a slave woman and he's a Muslim, I'm pretty sure he's gonna indoctrinate that child. So your argument is shot down once again, brothers. Come on, you got to do better than that. You got to do better than that. And let's see here. And we're gonna go to the next sentence. Manumission of a slave was encouraged as a way of expiating sins. Many early converts to Islam, such as Baal M. Rabah al-Habasi, were the poor and former slaves. In theory, slavery in Islamic law does not have a racial or color component, although this has not always been the case in practice. So basically, they were enslaving people to get rid of sin. They were basically enslaving people to convert them into being Muslims. That's what everybody did, was to indoctrinate them. So once they let them loose in their society, they would be assimilated, and they would have people working their butts off just to show their appreciation for freedom. So, brother, come on, man. Another bad argument. You know what I mean? Let's stop doing this. Let's do some research, please. Can we do some research?
So, all right, let's go ahead and move on.
that no church, no organization, no political movement ever speaks of. It is a forgotten history. It is a forgotten evil that has occurred throughout the world. Okay. I want to go to Isaiah 49 and verse 6. Let's go
He's
there.
gonna cut himself now.
Ours is the true Holocaust. You talk about 6 million.
Stop right there. Stop right there.
Mm-hmm.
He says ours is the true Holocaust. First and foremost, I don't think Nathaniel knows that Holocaust means to burn. That's what a Holocaust is. Hold up, let me show him this, man. Goodness, man. Yo, when they every time I hear the true Holocaust, I'm like, man.
And while he's looking it up, we'll mention it again. He mentioned it earlier. We're in no fashion downplaying what happened in the transatlantic slave trade. What we understand is that the root of it is sin. Evil men, for whatever their motive was, whether it was greed of money, love of money, so therefore they sold slaves that they may, make money off the backs of these people, or by pure hatred for a certain people, sell them or put them in chains and all that kind of stuff. Whatever the motive was, the root of it is sin. That's the point. You get rid of sin, you have none of this. None of this occurs.
Yeah, but real quick, I'm gonna show this. This is crazy, man, that these guys are saying stuff like this. So Holocaust. So mid-13th century, sacrifice by fire, burnt offering. From the Old French Holocaust, or directly from the Latin holocaustum, from the Greek holocauston, a thing wholly burnt. Root of holocaustos, burned whole. From holos, whole. And kaustos, verbal adjective of kainin, to burn. Originally a Bible word for burnt offerings. Given wider figurative sense of massacre, destruction of a large number of persons from the 1670s, the Holocaust Nazi genocide of European Jews in World War II, first recorded in 1957, earlier known in Hebrew as Shoah, catastrophe. The word itself was used in English in reference to Hitler's Jewish policies from 1942, but not as a proper name for them. So, but they like to go by etymology. Remember, they got this big thing on etymology. The etymology of the word is to burn. I just wanted to point that out because they try to say ours was the true Holocaust. Well, if we go by the etymology of the word as they like to do, granted, I'm not doing this because I'm simply using their logic against them. Whenever they want to make appeals to things, they go to they try to find the etymology of a word, or this is what this really means. Well, Holocaust really means to burn.
All right, faithful. I respect you, brother. I respect you a whole lot. So, and really, I respect all you guys, because what you're doing is you're trying to spread the word and you're trying to do it correctly. That's the way you see it. But still, brother, what I see here is an incorrect way of portraying what the word Holocaust means. And I'm gonna I'm gonna use your lead to even dive into this word. Alrighty, with the online dictionary. So basically, when you look at the Holocaust, you see that there's a couple different meanings. Okay, so let's not try to forget that. Okay, and you read it, but the way you said, Brother Nathaniel, glossed right over some things. Faithful, you did the same thing. You glossed right over it, and it's kind of misleading, brother. So when you look at the first sentence, mid 13th century, okay? So that's around the mid 13th century or mid to the 13th century, okay? So the Middle Ages to the 13th century. That's what I'm reading into. From the mid to the 13th century, this is what the word Holocaust meant. Sacrifice by fire, burnt offering. Okay, so now you said it means burnt offering. Did Hitler have an altar And was he praying to some idol god while he was burning those folks, you know, and then eating their flesh afterwards? No, he didn't do that. So you can't use that as the word, even though that's where the root word came from, Holocaust. The word changed its meanings as history went along. Okay, all right. And then there's 12th century and in parentheses, or directly from late Latin holocaustum, from Greek holocauston, a thing wholly burnt, neuter of holocaustos, burned whole, or from holos, whole, plus kustos, verbal adjective of km, to burn, see caustic. But in the next paragraph, it tells you clearly, originally a Bible word for burnt offerings, given wider figurative sense of massacre. So basically they use that as an allegory, brother, given wider figurative sense of massacre, destruction of a large number of people from the 1670s. So right here it's telling you in the 1670s, brother, the word changed. The word changed in the 1670s. You read it, but you glossed over it. You glossed over from the mid to the 13th century. You glossed over 12th century, and then you glossed over the most important part that was supposed to prove your point, brother, because it wasn't going to prove your point, so you glossed right over it. From the 1670s, Holocaust meant massacre, destruction of a large number of people or persons. So the Holocaust, neo-genocide of European Jews in World War II, was first recorded, the word Holocaust of the Jews was first recorded in 1957, so the word changed again, brother. Earlier known in Hebrew as Shoah. So you said it right there, which means catastrophe. So that whole word Holocaust went from burnt offering to 1957 to mean catastrophe. Okay? So come on, brother. Let's don't do this. And to kind of and just to kind of prove the point a little further, I went to an actual dictionary. Let me see here. Okay, so Holocaust again. When you look up the dictionary online, it's basically saying the same thing as the etymology in the 1670s. It says a large amount of destruction, especially by fire or heat. But especially doesn't, I mean, that's just like add emphasis to it. But we know that it means a large amount of destruction. And then, hold on, wait, or the killing of a very large number of people. Okay? So basically, and they give you an example, a nuclear holocaust would leave few survivors. Okay? So, I mean, it came from the root word, as you said, to burn. So they just gave you an example, but what it actually means is, now in today's terminology, it means the killing of a large number of people. Okay, so let's not play these games here, man. I mean, we're gonna be all about semantics, trying to pick out everything people saying. We're getting away from the point of what I thought you guys were really trying to do, and that's to spread the gospel. Right now it's looking like, you know, you throwing rocks and the rocks are boomeranging right back to you, brother. So, you know, just be about the gospel and cut all that other stuff out. Okay, so faithful. So brother Nate did say our true Holocaust, but the key word in there was our. Okay, even though he said true, you know, that word, you know, that's a heavy word. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, he's talking about what happened to us. Okay. Everybody tells us to get over it, but they're not telling everybody else to get over it. With that Holocaust, that was terrible. It was horrible. Okay, And and I understand their pain because our people went through the same thing. You know what I mean? So I understand why it's such a big deal to them. As big of a deal as the Holocaust is for those that call themselves Jewish people today, should be equally understandable when we talk about slavery. But when we say slavery, it doesn't give that same ring of a bell as that Holocaust. Because Holocaust, that's like one of those words. Like you said, it meant burnt offering. That means just something evil and terrible. Terrible. But slavery means that, hey, you know, this was just a group of people that, you know what I mean, that just went into bondage. But why did we go into bondage? The Lord told you why we went into bondage and kept going back into bondage. And just like Jay was saying earlier, you know, hey, these other people went into slavery as well. Okay, they did. But they were generational slaves, brother. They weren't being passed down and destroyed, and everybody in one country don't know where they came from. That didn't happen to them. No black person in America that came from that slave trade, and that's the majority of the black people in America. In America, the black people that were brought over here, which is the majority, don't know where they came from. Those people that were sold in that Barbary slave, they still have people that were left behind that knows who they are, okay? And it wasn't ongoing. And I'm not sure they were able to procreate and all of that stuff. So, Brother Jay, do the research and bring that out for us, okay? You know, instead of just throwing out just useless information without meat, because that's what we want, the meat of the matter, okay? Like I said, the Jewish people of today, that was terrible. But for you to even make a video and even bring up slavery and just because, you know, and try to explain it, that's terrible. There's no sensitivity there at all. And I'm like, man, what are you brothers doing? What are you doing? This is terrible. And you guys are making it seem as if it is nothing. What are you guys doing, man? What are you doing? Come on, man. Get out of this ego. I don't know what happened with the breakup with these camps, but you guys are going just after one camp. You say you're going after everybody, but Faithful, I haven't heard you make one video about the Hebrew roots movement that you came out of. I haven't seen it, brother. So when are you gonna start going after that doctrine? Okay, and I'm not saying it because I'm afraid to deal with you, because you know I will deal with you. You know what I mean? You might not agree with me, and I might not agree with you, but you know that we can have a dialogue. Even Brother Jay knows that we can have a dialogue. And at the end of the day, it's gonna be like one of those, what is it, Bernard Hopkins fights. It's gonna be ugly. It's gonna be painful. It ain't gonna be what you think it's gonna be, because you ain't dealt with it, man. And the only reason why I'm bringing this stuff out is not for ego. I'm just like, man, do what you set out to do if you came to spread that gospel. But if you just came to dog everybody out, you know what I mean? Because these camps, they really ain't dealing with any other camp. They're not really basing their whole system, their whole direction towards other camps. They're not doing that. They're coming with what they feel like the truth is, and they're getting large sums of people by not even really mentioning other people. So you're basically doing a disservice because you're not sticking to the gospel. All right, and that's all I gotta say. I gotta cut this video short, but it's gonna be a couple parts of the video. But let's continue.
That is the true Holocaust. Open up with Isaiah 49, verse 6, please.
The book of Isaiah, chapter 49 and verse 6. And he said, "It is a light thing that thou shouldest be my servant."
So the Most High said it's a light thing that we should be his servant. Come on.
"To raise up the tribes of Jacob."
Our job is to raise up the tribes of Jacob. Come on.
"And to restore the preserved of Israel."
Our job is to restore the preserved of Israel.
Stop right there.
Also,
Stop right there.
Uh-huh.
Wait, go back a little bit. Just go back.
All right.
Because we're going to listen to this again. But I want you guys to notice something. He started off with Isaiah 49:6. Before he goes into this ridiculous breakdown,
Yeah.
I just want to highlight that verse doesn't give him any leeway at all to insert his private interpretation into the text, because number one, the first half of that verse is making it clear. It is a light thing that thou should be of my servant, to raise up the tribes of Jacob and to restore the preserved of Israel. Right then and there, you have all the tribes listed. That means scattered Israelites, people who stopped whatever, acknowledging that they were Israelites, whatever you want to call it. All those people are being accounted for in that verse. It is impossible for him to come to the conclusion he's about to in a moment, because we're going to listen to this again. But I want everybody out there to take note of something. And we can look at this in the English, but it becomes even clearer.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, let's go to the I shrink the video so that as he reads,
Yeah.
it's good that you set it up too. So as he reads, we'll read along with him.
Well, real quick, before I forget,
All right.
That word preserved in the Septuagint reading is diaspora of Israel. Can you do me a favor and pull up Isaiah 49:6 in the Septuagint?
All right, here, let me zoom
and then zoom, and if you could zoom in to so the audience can see.
How's that on your screen? Good?
Yeah, I see it. Yep. And he said to me, it is a great thing for thee to be called my servant, to establish the tribes of Jacob and to recover the dispersion of Israel. That word dispersion in the underlying Greek, anybody who wants to, they can look at this in eSword. There are Greek versions of the Septuagint, and they can see that word dispersion is diaspora in the Greek. All right.
Well, I was going to deal with the preserved, but since you went to the Septuagint, dispersion or diaspora, I like that better. And diaspora basically means dispersion. And when you look at the encyclopedia of the word, the dispersion is the comprehensive designation applied to Jews living outside of Palestine and maintaining their religious observances and customs among the Gentiles. And what I got to assume is that basically the customs that they were keeping were the customs and the traditions of their fathers. You know, I don't believe they were keeping the customs that the Lord gave them, because if they were, there's no way they would have been scattered. So, because in Jeremiah 10:3, here's one of the customs that's being talked about. For the customs of the people are vain, for one cutteth a tree out of the forest, the work of the hands of a workman with an axe. So, basically the customs that they were keeping were not of the Lord. That's why they were dispersed. And then the definition goes down to section 31, which basically says the synagogue services lent themselves most effectively to the ministry of Paul and his colleagues, and it was to the synagogue that they first repaired in every city they visited. So right here is basically saying that Paul repaired the doctrine, or I'm thinking he repaired the doctrine, because I can't see anything else that he had repaired or would repair. So he repaired the corrupt doctrine with sound doctrine in every city they visited. Why did they visit every city? Because the Israelites were dispersed into every city. I mean, not some cities, not partial cities, but every city. And Acts 20:4 is pretty much a testament that that Paul visited all these different cities, and that's just one of the few scriptures. So he was basically going to repair the word to the dispersed in these different cities. Okay, so let's stop playing. I mean, it's not a game, guys. And even when you read Amos 9 and 9, basically at the bottom of this highlighted portion, I will sift the house of Israel among all the nations, like as grain is sifted in a sieve, yet shall not the least kernel fall upon the earth. So, I mean, there you have it. Israel was sifted throughout all the nations, among all the nations. So, I mean, there you have it.
Diaspora is, scattered Israelites, right? Now, I want to highlight something. Now, can you go back to just the King James for a moment? The King James reading of Isaiah 49:6. There we go. I wanted to make that clear. I will also give thee for a light to the Gentiles, that thou mayest be my salvation unto the ends of the earth, unto the end of the earth. I will also give thee. In other words, the scattered Israelites, the 12 tribes, are being accounted for in the first half of that sentence. The latter half of that sentence is accounting for the Gentile believers, literal Gentile believers, which he doesn't believe can be saved. But the very thing that he's quoting is cutting him. It's contradicting him. But let's listen to his understanding of this, because there's really no way he can get around this unless he's just going to try to ignore the context and just try to insert scattered Israelites even into the Gentiles, which wouldn't make any sense.
All right. Let's read Isaiah 49:6, because this right here is going to be the kicker. Because all right, let's just read it. All right. Isaiah 49:6. And he said, it is a light thing that thou shouldest be my servant to raise up the tribes of Jacob and to restore the preserved of Israel. I will also give thee for a light to the Gentiles, that thou mayest be my salvation unto the end of the earth. Okay? So now, let's read it one more time. But this time, let's read it in context, because it seems like so many people have a hard time reading this, or even a lot of scripture, in context. And I had to do this to G-Man in my first video, but I'm about to do it again. And let's see, maybe you could correct me. You know what I mean? But let's see. And he said, it is a light thing that thou shouldest be my servant to rise up the tribes of Jacob and to restore the preserved of Israel. Now, this is when you get into the English language, or any language for that matter. You can't just look at that and say, oh, period. Oh, now that's the end of that thought. So now, I got you. I will also give thee for a light to the Gentile. No. The first thing you learn in English with punctuation is how to use punctuation. All right. Right there, you have a colon. And you could just do a simple search, a simple Google search, and how to use colons. And this is what you got. Use a colon to introduce an item or series of items. Do not capitalize the first item after the colon unless it is a proper noun. Okay, now they're about to give you some examples. You know what to do, colon, practice. Okay, so now the practice is, basically letting you know what you got to do. And it also works the same way when you start listing items. Okay, second example, you may be required to bring many things. Okay, and the way you guys are using it, that's that. You know what I mean? That's a period. There's nothing else to be said about that sentence that I just read. But when you know basic English, it says, this is what you're about to bring: sleeping bags, pans, utensils, and warm clothing. So you're not finishing a sentence, and we could go on. All right. And then I know you're gonna say, okay, well, it said don't use a capital letter after the colon. But I mean, I know you ain't gonna go there, but just in case you do, look up proper nouns. And basically, when you look up proper nouns, it basically says always be sure to remember that I is always capitalized. It is a proper pronoun. All right, so basically, when you go back to Isaiah 49:6, it's basically continuing talking about Israel. Okay, it's still talking about Israel and to restore the preserved of Israel. Who are the preserved? You just said they were the diaspora. So the diaspora were those that were not keeping the customs of God. Okay, so when they go into the nations and take on other customs or even practicing the customs that they were practicing, and that was the reason they got kicked out. They are, in a sense, Gentiles, brother, and it's clearly when you read the English language. I will also give thee for a light to the Gentiles, that thou mayest be my salvation unto the end of the earth. Okay, unto the end of the earth. It's still talking about the dispersion. But I know Faithful, he was like, aha, I got you. I will also give thee. I will also give thee. Now let's take a look at what also says, since you like to look up so many words. When you look up the Hebrew word, basically there's a sentence, or there's a group of words that Nathan actually means. And when you look up the Hebrew 54:14, in this context is basically saying, I will also give. So all of that is included in the word give. So it's not glossing over also is included in that word and a part of Nathan, if you can see right here. I mean, it's clear. I mean, it's so clear. I don't get why we got to go through all this every time. So basically, when you look at the preserved, and it's saying all in one word, Nathan, which is I will also give thee. You can't read it like you read the English language, Faithful, and I think that's why you're having a problem understanding certain text, and then you also gonna have a time understanding text when you ignore punctuations. So it's pretty cut and dry, especially when Jesus said in what was it, Matthew? Was it Matthew 5? Let's see. Let me make sure I'm right. Matthew 5 and 17 through 18. And let me get that in the King James version. All right, Matthew 5 and 17 through 18. Think not that I come to destroy the law or the prophets. And it's basically, there's a colon right after that too. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass, one jot. What is a jot, Faithful? A jot is the smallest letter, or one tittle. What is tittle? That's a punctuation mark. Shall in no wise pass from the law. So you quote that verse a lot. You know what I mean? As a debunking mechanism, but you really can't, because the tittle that you overlooked is not going to be is not passed away. That tittle is still there, but you conveniently ignore that tittle. And Faithful, I'm doing this because I love you guys, and I see that you are trying to do the right thing, but there's heresy in there. There's heresy, and you basically got to cut it out, brother. Cut it out. Please, cut it out. Focus on the gospel. Stop trying to be Mr. Debunk. All right, so basically, we're gonna deal with the also give, also I also give text. So basically, when you when you look up the text, you'll see at the top of the picture, you will see send, recompense, appoint, show, and these are the same words that are the Nathan in that Isaiah 49:6. But when you look later in Isaiah, what is it? Isaiah 61:3, you will see that that word is used twice. The actual 54:14 is used twice. And when you read Isaiah 61:3, you see where it says, to appoint unto them that mourn in Zion, to give, and that's to give, but at the beginning of the sentence you have a point, which is the same thing, which is 54:14. You can look it up yourself. And to give unto them beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness, that they might be called trees of righteousness, the planting of the Lord, that he might be glorified. So who is this talking about, faithful? Who is this talking about? I mean, I know you're gonna say it's all out of context, but at the end of the day, I'm just showing you that the word right here, it has to give, but it can also be a number of words more than to give, and it could be a single word like a point. I mean, the point is that you got to do your research, brother. You got to cut this out. You know what I mean? And I know you were very pivotal for probably. Well, I'm not gonna say I know you were, but just listening to you on that the summer special for Debate Talk for You, it seems like you were very pivotal in bringing the brothers out of those doctrines, which I'm not gonna say is a good thing or a bad thing. This video isn't about, what choices they made. It's just about if you're going to be their leader, lead them and do more research. Lead them to do research and to actually put these verses in context, because, I mean, that's why this video has to be three-part from that one video, Call to Arms. And that video that you had Sunday, another IUIC debunk. Man, I was listening to that coming down the road. Man, I had my buddy in the car. We were getting off from work, and he was like, "How are you knowing what they're gonna say?" Well, that's basically what he was getting at. He didn't say it like that, but because we've been through it, and I've heard you guys, man, and I gotta go into that too. You know what I mean? And like I said, I'm just doing this for love, brothers. And if you think that I'm wrong, call it out. Call me out. You know what I mean? Do what you got to do. You know what I mean? Because hey, like I said, I've only been analyzing the text for a year and a half. You know what I mean? So I'm still what you would call a babe. You know what I mean? I still haven't weaned from the milk yet. But I am seeing that there's some error in all of these doctrines. You know, that's why I haven't joined the camp. Because why would I join the camp when I see, based off of what you're saying, they're saying, and the other ones are saying, that I could see the error in it. But one thing I got to say is those brothers, through the News 102, that's how I came across them. Then I searched for more, and then I found the guys in purple, and they were pivotal in me wanting to dig into that book. So I'm not doing this for them. I'm doing it because there might be somebody else out there that looked at them and said, hey, you know what I mean? Let me get into this book, because I never seen any brothers this powerful that read that book. You know what I mean? And then, they did their job as far as the case is concerned with me. And I mean, they did their job for Brother Jay, Brother Marcus, and whatever camp Kemiel was a part of. They did their job to get them to start investigating the book even more. So there was good that came out of those doctrines, okay? There was good, because it led people to inquire and to basically want to know the truth. you know, because the way they presented it. So it may have been that chart that brought them brothers on. It wasn't the chart that brought me on, because I was like, man, these niggas crazy. But you know, the more I listened to them, it was like, hey, I gotta, you know, hey, let me get up and open this book up and see what they saying, see if it's really saying this. And that's and you know, then I started researching. So I mean, I'm about to cut this video off. I'm gonna finish this little point up. But brothers, come on now, y'all got to do a better job than that.
At all. Yeah, but let's hear what he has to say.
And he said, "It is a light thing that thou shouldest be my servant."
So the Most High said it's a light thing that we should be his servant. Come on.
To raise up the tribes of Jacob.
Our job is to raise up the tribes of Jacob. Come on.
And to restore the preserved of Israel.
Our job is to restore the preserved of Israel. Come on.
I will also give thee for a light to the Gentiles.
The light to the Gentiles are our people who suffered during the time of the forced
Bruh.
during the time of Sahara slave trade.
You see what he just did?
Yeah.
Hold on. Do you see what he just did? He glossed over the I will also. Israel's being accounted for. Scattered Israelites, lost Israelites, whatever you want to call it, are being accounted for in the very first half of the sentence. That latter half is being directed squarely to the Gentiles. In fact, in the Septuagint, I actually have the Greek right here if I can find it. Here's what makes it interesting, right? Because the word there in the Hebrew is goyim, and in the Greek Septuagint, it is ethno or ethne. Now, that word is a generic term. Both of those are generic terms. When you say goyim, or actually I should say it like this. Goy is a generic term because it can mean the goy of Yisrael, or the nation of Israel, or the ethnos or ethne of Israel, which is again in reference to the nation of Israel. But whenever it is being used in terms of, you know, where Israel is in the sentence, it is always when ethnos or goyim appear, goyim in the Hebrew, ethnos in the Greek, it is always used as distinct from Israel. It's always used that way, because it would make no sense to have when there's a distinction being made, not when the word ethnos, rather when ethnos is being used in distinction to Israel. All right. Now what I want to do is, if I can pull up the Greek, y'all just give me a moment. I want to highlight this point. And so what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to screen share if this thing will let me. All right. Oh, I know how I can do it. Hold up, y'all. I just figured this out. All right. Yeah, I'm going to try to pull it in.
And if you want to, at some point in the hangout, we have one skeptic in the comment section that is kind of speaking against the Septuagint. So we want to show him real fast the validity of that and how the apostles actually quoted from the Septuagint.
Who's actually? All right, hold up. Let me check. Don't tell me.
Let me see.
Yeah, that was me who they said was speaking against the Septuagint, but I wasn't really speaking against the Septuagint. I was just basically saying that the Septuagint for the book of Job, I mean, as far as scholars were speaking on, they said the Septuagint wasn't an accurate book for the book of Job, based off of cultural language and basically the history that revolved around that time, and so that's basically all I was saying. I didn't say that the Septuagint isn't accurate overall. I mean, other than, you know, basically like Faithful called out, if you hear it a little further on, when the Septuagint went on to say that Job was an Edomite or a grandson of Esau or whatever it said. But yeah, I mean, that's all. But the scholars said the same thing. And not only that, you know, when the Septuagint was written, it was written, I guess, around the Alexandria period when he had this massive library, this massive Greek library, and that's what he was basically priding himself on and getting putting together just a massive library. And we know that around that time, especially around the 3rd century BC, that when the Jews were living amongst the Greeks, they had took on the Greek customs, even though they were Jews and they knew they were Jews. So with all those extra words added to the book of Job, I mean, I got to do a little more research, but I'm just going off the research of the scholars, and then based off of the history and things that were going on in the 3rd BC and the Septuagint being written in Alexandria. I mean, come on. I mean, you just think about it. I mean, that's it. That's all I had to say about that.
I could already imagine who it is. So this is ethnos. Okay, can you guys see my screen? Actually, I gotta stop presenting you. All right, so this is the Septuagint reading of Isaiah 49:6, right? Now, I know my screen just went blank. All right, there we go. Do you guys see where the first bracket has Israel, right?
Yeah.
Do you see the bottom bracket where ethnon appears, right?
Yeah.
Now, ethnon would still be I guess you would say it's the same as ethnos. It's a specific construct of ethnos. But needless to say, both of these are used, and they're being used in distinction to one another. In other words, Israel is not in reference to ethnos or ethnon, and ethnon is not in reference to Israel. They are completely distinct terms being used within this verse. So for him to assert that ethnon is in reference to our people when it clearly is not, and trust me, this works also by looking at the Hebrew, where goyim appears in stark contrast to Yisrael in the Hebrew. In fact, I'll do that right now. I'm going to go to Bible Hub. Or if you could, my brother, could you go to BibleHub.com and go to Isaiah 49:6? Or actually, I'll just send you the link. And the reason why I'm pointing this out is because there is no way
I'm on it
to insert scattered Israelites into that passage. All right, so I'm going to present you. All right, there we go. Okay, so could you actually zoom in? Just zoom in if you could, my brother. Now, do you see where preserved of Israel, Yisrael, right? Tribes of Jacob, preserved of Israel, right?
Yeah.
Right? Very clear, right? Now, look at the bottom. And I will also give you, right, for a light to who? To the goyim. When that word goyim is used in stark contrast to Israel, it is always in reference to the other nations. It is never. This is simple grammar. This is simple understanding. And it's crazy because they're cutting themselves and they don't realize it.
Faithful, you're right. It's simple grammar. And right now it seems like the only person cutting themselves is you. You, brother Jay and Kemiel, because of basic grammar.
But we're gonna find out how he's gonna try to tie this together. And I guarantee you he's gonna try to go to one of the favorite verses that Hebrew Israelite proponents like to take out of context. But that's cut and dry, man. There's no way a Hebrew Israelite proponent can ever read Isaiah 49:6 and come to the understanding that that's only talking about Israel. Absolutely not.
No.
That is clear in the underlining text. That is clear if one reads the Greek Septuagint or the Hebrew, and it is absolutely clear even in the translation. There's no way for them to get around that. But we're going to find out that he's going to try to get around this by going to their favorite little misquoted verses or misunderstood verses. And we know what they're going to try to go to. I'm pretty sure it's going to be something in Matthew. So let's go ahead and keep listening and see what he's about to do.
All right.
brings up the tribes of Jacob. Come on.
And to restore the preserved of Israel.
Our job is to restore the preserved of Israel. Come on.
I will also give thee for a light to the Gentiles.
The light to the Gentiles are our people who suffered during the time of the forced migration, during the time of sub-Saharan slave trade, transatlantic slave trade, colonialization. We have been renamed, re-identified, okay, throughout the world. No longer are we known as the children of Jacob. No longer are we known as the 12 tribes of Israel.
Stop right there. Stop right there for a moment. What he's doing now is going to his whole spiel about how, you know, Gentile really means scattered Israelites. So now what he's being is selective, because clearly this verse, when it talks about Gentiles, it is talking about the other nations. But because it's being used in a positive sense, and I've always pointed this out, whenever Gentiles is used in a negative connotation or sense, they will immediately say, yeah, that is talking about the other nations. Whenever Gentiles is being used in a positive sense, now they have to reconstruct the actual meaning of the text and make it say something other than what it's clearly saying, right? So now he's really just trying to say that's talking about scattered Israelites, that's talking about our people, and he's going into his whole spiel about that. But the problem is, again, as we clearly saw, the text does not give him leeway to insert that interpretation.